feel free. Andy Clay wanted to speak.
Yeah, what I suggest is this: is that Gotti's suggesting we try and align as quickly as possible with IVSC and IASB. If we're able to do that, why don't we ask them what the solution is? Because they're a much bigger organization than us. They have much bigger impact, and they, at the end of the day, represent the primary users of what we generate.
Okay. Well, our template aligns with them, so we have aligned with them the IMVAL template as much as possible. Yeah.
So just picking up on what Andy is saying,
yeah.
just picking up on what Andy is saying, and having seen some of the differences that are coming from, let's call them the Eastern countries versus the Western countries. If we say we're going to go align with IVSC and IASB, are the accounting standards consistent across all countries, including China, Mongolia, and the rest of it? Or are there different accounting processes? Because if you align with IASB, are you not now running the risk of preventing other countries coming in because they don't adhere to those principles?
That's a good point, but we haven't aligned with any specific accounting body. We have them as friends, if you want to call it, or associations and affiliates.
I guess the issue is that while it's probably a good idea to get closer to IBSC and IASB on a global basis,
and
we need to be circumspect that we don't alienate certain countries because they don't adhere to those principles.
Point well taken. Point well taken. Yeah.
The other thing, Keith, you and I were talking earlier today, and you said you'd already had some initial discussions with ICMM about coming in to become a, let's call it a sponsor or supporter of IMVAL globally. Can you tell us about where that is, how
well,
it's going?
We haven't had any discussions. I'm just saying that is something we should start working on, because one of the things that I would say the thing that really moved the growth of Crisco in the last 2 or 3 years is having that relationship with the International Metal ICMM. They are well funded. They have a lot of money from all the major mining companies, and they are providing a lot of funding to Crisco. So Crisco has gotten a financial boost by just aligning with them. And we can do the same. And currently, the chair of IMVAL is a Canadian, and similarly, the chair of Crisco is a Canadian. And so I see what they're doing, and financially, they're very strong.
Yeah, I think there's a different aspect to the financial support would be very useful. But I think it's the global reach and the global influence that ICMM can bring about the mining industry internationally, which can only stand in our good stead.
Yes, yes, I agree. And I know the president quite well, and I'm going to see him at one of these things, either in London in December, and I'll make an effort to have a discussion with him. When I say I know him informally, but not in the context of IMVAL.
I just wanted to answer the issue around IASB and IVSC. So if you look at IVSC, there is only one IVSC and it covers the whole globe. The IASB has got some subtle differences that, for example, maybe 80% of the world uses IFRS standards, and the US uses the US GAAP. But those two have already been mapped. There is some differences, but they've already been mapped in terms of how they can be linked. So association with IASB and IVSC, I don't think there is a downside to it, because it's the global standard. So regardless of which country, the application might be different, and in terms of how it gets applied, but it's the same standard. So if you look at, I'm not singling out China, they still use the same IVSC standard, but the valuations, you've got some differences, but in terms of approach definitions, they are exactly the same.
And they use IASB, they use that quite a bit because when they have to list in North American stock exchanges now, that has changed a bit. And tomorrow when I talk about the geopolitics, but they've been very, very cognizant of the IASB and the Western accounting standards for all the Chinese companies that are listed in Hong Kong. Yeah.
Let me just talk about reporting in Kazakhstan.
Not only, more globally. My comment would be that probably to start with, it's important to be vocal about the value proposition of IMVAL. Unless it's clear and understood, it's very difficult to judge what's the right set of actions required for promoting its ideals. And obviously the purpose and vision probably needs to be refined, as I guess the template is a good word. Standard may not be so good in some jurisdictions, as they would believe that their own standards would work better, whereby it might be under the same template. And for IMVAL, I believe it's important to understand what exactly IMVAL is aspiring to achieve and how exactly it's aspiring to achieve it, right? And I would caution against a couple of things, misunderstanding how the regulatory bodies are working in different jurisdictions. That's important because it's a critical issue sometimes. And also trying to bear in mind that IMVAL was built essentially in English. For good or bad, I mean, it doesn't matter. It's for good, probably. But interpretation gets a lot of things lost in translation. And even the English version of the lingua franca of geologist may be subject to some improvements because, for example, think about it. We have the following resources classifications: measured, indicated, inferred, right? Does indicated mean it's not measured? In some way it is. There is a number behind it. Okay, and obviously the distinction in many languages, in most languages, I can assure you that there is no distinction between valuation and evaluation.
Yes.
So whoever is translating that would build up significant additional wording, explaining it, and luckily it's going to be straight to the point, but there may be some other options. So essentially, the purpose of IMVAL and value proposition is critical. The glossary is absolutely critical. And some of the terminology which is being used in South Africa or Australia for hundreds of years is quite new to some jurisdictions. So bear in mind the translation is critical for IMVAL to be adopted in as many jurisdictions as you desire.
I agree. I can tell you, I know with the Chinese, they have two words for pingu for valuation, and then they have a different word for what we call evaluation. But in other languages, it's the same. And even most people in English, they couldn't be bothered. You know, we for professional purposes, we separate the names, but the average practitioner doesn't always. That's why in the early stages of, when we make a presentation on SIMVAL, we always say, this evaluation is this, and valuation is the other. One is how much, what's the value of a project? What's the value? How would you, is it worth $10 or $50 million? Versus evaluation, is this a good project or is this a bad project?
I would also add the critical distinction for estimate and opinion. In many jurisdictions, this is not in common language used in some situations. So it's very important to really stress that whatever measurement or indication or inference is done, it's still an estimate with a higher or lower level of confidence. That's critically important. And what we deliver essentially to the public is our opinions We don't know the right method, the only method, the right value, the spot number. We don't know. The value, I believe, of the profession at large is to deliver opinion, which is educated, obviously, but still an opinion. That's also very special in terms of how it's been appreciated elsewhere.
Well said, Alexander. Any other question, comments with respect to the
Number 4.
member valuation organizations? Yeah, okay. We have two over there, Good Nose and Andy.
So just talking about topics to be aired, exclusive and inclusive reporting is one we put on
Okay.
the map.
All right. We'll handle that under the topical issues, remember? Yeah.
So I think for the membership, I think it's I think getting more members I think is a good thing. And I think if you follow the same CRISCO methodology, the national regulatory authorities have got a peculiar way of dealing with certain things that is prominent in their jurisdiction. So the template should not give, it should be the minimum standard, but it should allow certain things to be different. For example, I think in my presentation, I showed the difference around, for example, SAMVAL, we did not include independence in our, as our one of our core principle, right? But because the template allows for it, I think it should continue to be principles based, so that at least certain issues in a different jurisdiction can be dealt in the jurisdiction, but still aligned to the template.
Well said, and I think that was very much the thinking in the last update of the template. Very much so, to keep that flexibility.
Cool.
Okay, no more. Okay, so we'll move on to item 5, which is a little blue sky. You know, having we saw this morning in one of the presentations. I wasn't sure if it was you, God knows, or was it you, Andy, about the CRISCO and the United Nations recognize, or at least I don't know if recognize is the right word, CRISCO.
I think it
And
was,
we're working to have the same. I think
yeah,
I get invited to all their events, that United Nations organization, and maybe we should see how we could have a closer relationship with them.
I think the word was accreditation, Keith.
Yes.
Yeah, but anyway.
Oh, okay. All right. And we're trying to have the same initiatives with the, you know, CRISCO now has relationship with the Law of the Sea, because the deep sea resources and helping to develop how do you analyze all these humongous resources in the oceans. I'll talk tomorrow. I'll touch on that on the geopolitics. Any discussion on number 5? Okay, we move on to number 6. Before we get to number 6, we have our Secretary Treasurer here, and I know he wanted to talk a little. Grant? Yeah, I know he wanted to talk a little about, he sent out a letter to the MVOs, the members. You might want to say something, Grant. You get in the mic, yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm the treasurer. I've been sending all the emails about collection, and Keith thought it'd be a good idea that either we do this the easy way today or the hard way. So basically, Keith, what was the clause in the charter that we?
The clause was not a tough clause. It was a clause that said members will contribute, as opposed to members should contribute.
Right. So I think,
but it implies that we expecting people to should.
yeah. So, like I said, we've got the electronic payment option. I think I've sent everyone the collection how to do that. I think we've had 1 or 2 to date. I know we had 1.
Yeah.
But again, folks, just
I
trying
think
to,
some val is up to you've done your part here. I know the Canadians have done their part. Yeah.
okay. So, yeah, if, again, it's 1,100 for the org and 550 for the observer is what requested, not demanded,
Yeah.
although, you know, we'll try. But anyways,
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. And we now move on to item 6, topical valuation issues. If anybody think you have something we should add to the list, I'll add it now or forever hold your peace.
I've got a couple of things in if everyone's going to be quiet.
Added, I think I have it on on the desk there near Tiana. I can't remember what it is, but I did add another one to the list of the 5. I don't think we have to waste time on AI. Maybe we might want to talk about ESG, political risk quantification. How do you put a number on that? People talked about it today, but nobody delved into how you quantify it. Tomorrow, I'll talk a little about geopolitical risk, which is even bigger than just political risk. Use of discount rates, I think we talked about it earlier, but I think there's lots of room for discussion, and then metal prices.
So I want to add on a few more. There was a paper early.
Six, what do you think?
There's a paper early on by Veriardi on, and he put a value to early stage projects. My experience of people who do valuations of early stage projects, they get very wide range of values.
Okay, so early stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So right there, early stage, and what other techniques and
It's the most difficult of all evaluation.
yeah, but Andy also spoke about probabilistic methods, and I think we need to apply our minds a bit further in this particular area.
Okay. Probably okay. So 6 early stage, 7 probabilistic methods,
Oh, same one.
exclusive and inclusive.
And then we had the Australians chatting back and forth, and for me, they made 2 very good points. And the one was about technical training. Just take a step back. We here to service the people who use us for advice. That makes us servants to them. But it'll help if we all speak a common language and we're trying to speak to our sponsors and they don't understand the rules of the game. We should be spending some time thinking about how we're getting that message out to the minerals industry about what we're talking about.
So you're talking about marketing?
I'm talking about perhaps training in some instances,
Okay.
could be marketing, but I think it's a discussion we need to have at this level on topic of valuation issues.
Okay, training.
Training of executives.
Yes,
The other point I want to make is that diversity of thinking around uncertainty. It's very important. Someone mentioned garbage in and garbage out, or if you put something in, you should get the same answer. Yeah, only if you think in the same way.
Could cover that on the stake methods?
No,
The
no. I'm talking about
uncertainty.
different perceptions around the world. Because if you perceive something differently to me, then you're likely going to see the risk very differently.
Okay, that's 10. All right. So
So,
okay, so we
Keith-
have 10 things that we're going to discuss.
Keith?
Yeah.
I say some of the things that Vaughn brought up are methodology or some of the, and IMVAL doesn't specifically discuss methodology, but I think that that can be tied in with the technical training because I think that, there should be conferences like this that discuss methodology specifically, to talk about methodology. So I think that could be part of the discussion, but it's,
Absolutely. But I think this discussion needs to come from IMVAL down. So we encourage the various jurisdictions to collectively do the same thing. It's nice to see that the Australians are a little bit ahead of all of us, in my mind.
Yeah, it's all about education, I think. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Okay, maybe we do it in order, just to keep some order. Deborah.
Just on the education piece, so the AusIMM runs I think it's like a 4 webinars series. So it's quite involved and it's mostly for practitioners or want to be practitioners. But we have talked about doing a, valuation for executives. And I think I heard a muttering of that, but some very high level thing that talks to company directors and some of our end users is something that we've talked about doing with the AusIMM, but we haven't got there yet.
Okay, and you do it as a sort of money maker, and it did bring in some revenue at the same time, right? Yeah. And it's a good idea. I know we at CIM and Simval, we've talked about that, but we haven't really gotten down to doing some of that. And that's an area that's ripe for a lot of activity, the training and education. And that's something I know we have it on the to-do list.
Promise not to disturb you anymore today. But one of the things which I'd like to raise here is, I don't know how many in the audience saw the IMVAL website. On this website, there's a brilliant set of presentations, I believe done in 21 or something, which has never been updated or expanded. But the quality is so high.
Yeah.
And I believe it's very important to find a way to proliferate this knowledge by putting more presentations of that kind on the IMVAL website. It's increasing credibility. It's the educational tool, and it promotes the brand.
And that's a good idea. One of the things I think I'd like to see us do is, after this conference, put the materials from this conference on the IMVAL website. And I know you'd probably put it on the SAMVAL website, but I'd like to see like the excellent work, the 2 papers this morning. I think those could very well be with others on the website.
Following on from that, I would like to recommend that you consider putting up an IMVAL YouTube channel and put all the videos and presentations and that there. Young people especially access YouTube, they watch YouTube. Much easier for them to go and watch something on YouTube than go and troll and find a website and watch things through there.
That's a very, very, very good point. And in fact, our budget, which we're asking you for dues, is to do something in that realm. It wasn't specifically YouTube, but now you mentioned YouTube, but doing something like that in that kind of vein, having something on the website where people can go to the website and be able to get a lot of knowledge. And one of the other things we have as a to-do is to have our own Wikipedia site also.
Keith, I don't know, Tanya, where you got that, but the issue of the website for IMVAL, I think it needs to be optimized. So if you type IMVAL today, it won't come up.
Yes.
I think it's something that I think it's an easy fix that I know it costs money, but I think it's an easy fix that you can get, because only if you say imval.org, you'll be able to access it, because I think it's either on the back end of one of the website or some IT needs to be optimized there.
You made an excellent point. In fact, I brought that up. We have a webmaster, and we had a big. He's actually from the U.S. That's so our SME member. He maintains, and I've had arguments with him. If you type in IMVAL, you get SIMVAL. They take you to the SIMVAL website. It takes you to Valmin. It takes you to SAMVAL, but not IMVAL. So it takes you to other sites that reference IMVAL as opposed to IMVAL itself. And one of the reasons in our budget, the last budget for this fundraising that we're doing, is to one of the items is to optimize the site. The most of the money is our public facing image that this money will be going towards. Okay. That was some good points on that training and education side. So that's number 9. We inadvertently started discussing number 9, but I don't want to change the discussion if we're in a trend with a certain item.
Okay, thank you. Are we discussing following the order or is random?
What's that?
Huh?
No, we're gonna come back and do it in order, but we will, as I was saying, because we will on a trend discussing number 9, which is education and training. I just continued. I didn't want to lose their ideas.
Okay.
So as soon as that's finished, I'll go back now to number 2, ESG. If there's no discussion on that, then we'll move according to the other items.
Okay, all right.
In order.
So because if there is random, I will jump to the number 5, but it's not. It's okay.
You will come to it soon. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right. How about we do number 2?
Well, Keith, there's extensive discussion on ESG and valuation tomorrow, and I think on Friday as well. So there's quite a lot of papers are going to be presented on that topic.
Okay.
Both in terms of ESG and valuation per se, but also the let's call it the perceived view of West versus East in terms of how that's handled. So that will be covered over the next couple of days.
Yes, and I hope we can do that the next couple of days. And in the US and a little bit in Canada, but certainly in the US, there's a huge backlash to the whole topic of ESG. And it's not what it was, say, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, definitely. The question is how much ESG, but we've always valued the environment, in our projects, in the evaluation, and even in valuation, we are aware of that. We've always cognizant of the social risk. In fact, I would argue is the biggest risk in mining, besides the political risk. And of course, the governance, which is the one that I think the stacking on the governance is the one that has created a lot of, because people are throwing a lot of stuff in the G.
Sorry, for number 2 is quite interesting. There's the new paper 2023 discussing about the environmental. Basically, this is profit optimization, but they consider about the environmental issue, optimize the pit, with consider the environment issue like climate change, like carbon storage, like so on, many things, with the quantitative analysis. I think because my understanding, ESG always like subjective, not like a number. So it's easy for us to understand the number, how we can predict it and how we can factor it, and it can affect the valuation. So learning from this one, they give a very, very good equation to come up with a number, and number we can affect the valuation. So maybe we can adopt this one if it is compatible with our project.
But before ESG became a buzzword, people were always trying to quantify the environmental risk on a project. We've always been doing that. And then we added the social risk. We've always been trying to quantify it, because I've argued this, and I think this is a good project for a master's student to look at all the projects that has failed. And I bet you the number 1 reason is the social risk. I could name a dozen projects now. Certainly I could name about 8 right now that are in problems because of the social, or when I say social, I mean the community. That's basically the community risk. And it used to be the resource risk. That was the big risk that the projects used to fail. But I have a haunting suspicion is the S. Yeah. Anybody want to challenge that? my thesis. Yeah, but I think that's a good master's project. Okay. If no more discussion, as Andy says, we're going to have a lot of ESG for the next 2 days, so maybe we could leave that. Political risk quantification. We saw your presentation, you had a quantification of political risk. Can you tell us how you quantify that and how you were able to, when you have a project, how you decide how much to allocate for the political risk? A project in South Africa versus a project in Mali or Niger, for example,
All
or
right.
Venezuela or Afghanistan.
All right. So each country they have their own geopolitical risk. You can download it www.geopo.com. There is the geopolitical risk index there. So this is basically what I use. I'm not compute with myself, so, but because some opinion says there is the strong relation between the geopolitics and nickel prices. This is issue in my country. So I do with the quantitative analysis with the, like a correlation, like a causality, like a co-integration. Look at, because in correlation, you only look at there is the correlation between the geopolitics and nickel price. But what affect nickel affect the geopolitics or geopolitics will affect the nickel? With the causality, we can look at both of them. Or with the vector error correction model, oh, this is affect this one. This is a two-way causality, not one-way causality. With this one, we can agree, oh, this one is affect this one. So we can look at the whole global effect from the political issue. So what I did this one, I did to look at the future nickel prices based on this data. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So
we'll talk about prices. I want to come.
Yeah, no, I mean this is
that's one of the inputs that has a lot of debate about.
Okay.
Any questions, Deborah?
So
Salman?
Yeah. S&P Global do a country risk score for individual countries and regions within countries, and so I often look at that when I'm looking at comparable transactions and just try and see if there's any pattern of the value of the transaction versus that risk score that S&P provide.
You use S&P. And what about, do you look at the Fraser Institute list?
I tend to rely on S&P. It's it's a independent measure that you can look at and assess yourself and see if you can find any patterns. And sometimes you can, and sometimes you can't.
And also, I think S&P use country bond rating because the market is deciding what their sovereign bonds should be. So that has part of the input in coming up with whatever the rating. So
yeah, they have. I'm just looking now. They have. Let me see. So detailed forward-looking ratings comprised of 6 aggregate and 22 sub-aggregate risk categories to compare and contrast risk between countries and regions. So they have a whole pile of different factors and they gather them all together into a single risk rating.
How is Australia rated? Is it near the top?
I think it would be similar to Canada.
Yeah.
And that I think they then bundle them into, high, medium, low, whatever the buckets are. But, and that might be enough to establish some assessment that you can do.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments? Some people imputed, somebody said this afternoon, who is it? That, one of the presenters talked about how the abuse of the discount rate by trying to put everything in the discount rate. So some people would argue, just bump up your discount rate to account for the fact that the project is in Mali or Niger. I hope there's nobody from Mali or Niger who has military, or Burkina Faso, who has military relatives there. I may not leave South Africa safely. By the way, anybody wants to comment about those countries? Because it's big issues in mining and we're in South Africa. Anybody from South Africa want to comment how those countries have changed in terms of mining. I'll touch slightly on it tomorrow.
One more point, from what we see see that the assessment of the political risk and country risk premium can be very different if you look from outside of the country and inside the country.
Yes.
So there is a well-established methodology in general valuation on how to come up with a discount rate. You can see for every country in the world. You can see it in the Professor Aswad Damodaran web page. But what we see that if somebody in the US, for example, applies this methodology to value the project in Kazakhstan, in Russia, in China, they come up with a discount rate which is not compatible with the prices that we see in the market. So it's also the complication which we need to consider. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a sort of theoretical question. I want people to put up their hand. When you're accounting for country risk, would you rather bump up or reduce, adjust the discount rate, or would you rather have a separate risk adjustment after you've done your stuff and you say, now, this is what I got. I should adjust it for so-and-so because it's in Venezuela?
No, we use adjustment to the discount rate.
Yeah. Any other point of view? Good enough.
So I think the issue of political risk, I think I always believe that the value is in the eyes of the beholder.
Mm.
So if it's a transaction between a South African company in South Africa, political risk is a moot point because everyone knows what is happening. The same as if I am doing evaluation, let's say in Mali, and it's a Mali transaction, this thing should not come into discussion because they are all in the same risk. I think where the challenge or where the political risk needs to be adjusted for is if I'm coming from, let's say, Europe, and I want to invest in Mali, because what I'm used to or what I understand in Europe and what is happening in Mali, yes, there is now a political risk that needs to be adjusted for because the environment that you're operating is different, and that way that's the only thing. But it doesn't mean to say now the valuation that has been done, let's say if it's an internal transaction, is wrong because it didn't consider political risk, or the one that was done outside, because it now depends on who is requesting the valuation. Because if, let's say I'm from Europe and I want to invest in Mali, I would tell you the answer is definitely not. I need to adjust for the risk because this mine could be expropriated from me or things like that, or I might not be able to get my US dollar out, things like that. So it depends on the circumstances, in my view.
Good point.
May I suggest that you change the name for number 3 to a more politically correct, but I believe also correct in general, country risk, because otherwise that confuses many people. When we're talking about cross-country investments, like God knows just said, absolutely rightly, you're talking about territory. You're not talking about specificity, which still, counts, but you're talking about country risk. So maybe you could consider that.
Yeah. So we were talking about country risk here. That's what we're thinking. Which tomorrow you'll see I will separate country risk and political risk from geopolitical risk. People think it's the same. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. Okay.
Sorry, Keith, just a thought, picking up on what Dr. Godnaz was saying and using Mali as the example. If you understand what the Mali military junta is requiring in terms of participation in a given project, if you do your cash flow analysis, say, and then you deduct what the proportion is that the government or the junta is going to demand, and then base your valuation on the residual, then I think you've got a fair using your own discount rate, then you've got a fairer view of what's going to happen with that project in the country. So you're not, rather than adjusting the discount rate, you're taking account of certain specific legal, environmental, other requirements in the, and also you probably find that they want 50% free carry. So you've got to now fund the full project, but only getting 50% of the revenue back. So all those things can be factored into your parameters that you're putting into the cash flow analysis without having to necessarily affect your discount rate.
That's a good point. So you get at the source of the cash flows itself before applying. So rather than say I'll get $10, you argue I'll only get $6, and you do your cash flows on $6 as opposed to $10. Yeah. Okay. I think we beat that subject to death. How about item 4, use of discount rate? They talked about this in their discussion. I think they did a pretty good job of it. One little pet peeve I have about it is that I think most geologists who haven't had a financial background I would highly recommend that they learn about the cost of capital and the CAPAN, the capital asset pricing model, to know how people actually get the cost of capital. I would highly recommend that because there's a lot of cases when you're choosing a discount rate, it's actually based on, normally in the market, people use CAPA, the capital asset pricing model, and they get the cost of equity or the cost of capital.
Question. Based on my point of view, in some cases in the exploration, CAPM is not enough. We should go with the risk adjusted. So, for example, we have the beta and adjusted beta. I think is clear because to modify the beta with the 1.45 covering for the two big company with the adjusted beta is more comfortable.
Yeah, well said. But I don't think much geologists know about beta and even alpha. I don't know if you know about alpha now, which is creating value. It's the opposite of beta. Beta is they can calculate that from the market.
And
yeah.
And last thing, I think there is the good presentation from the Lawrence Devon Smith, I think from the University of Toronto. There is the wake plus uncertainty plus risk, force risk. But the move awake, because we cannot calculate wake in the early stage of exploration because we don't have equity, we don't have the depth, something like that. Correct, I'm wrong here. He look at he compute the project stakes, so on and so on, and he come up with similar with the wake. So I think this is good point for the early stage of the exploration.
The weighted cost of capital.
Yeah.
What you're talking about?
No, I mean, wake is we need some data to get a wake. Wake then average of capital cost. But when I look at the presentation, but is from the Lawrence Devon Smith, he compute the same discount rate, but not using wake. He just 8 lakh, for example, project stage. What is this? There is some point that in the end of the computation is similar like the wake plus uncertainty plus risk.
Okay.
So I think it's good in the early stage of exploration.
I agree.
Thank you.
Let's move on. I think we'll move quickly to metal prices. Well, how does our time look, Vaughan?
We don't have too much more time, so maybe move through it quickly.
Yeah,
And-
how much
and-
more time we have? Maybe 15 minutes?
15 minutes.
Okay, 15 minutes,
Okay.
yeah.
And-
I can see Goodnose and his colleague, they're anxious for a nice South African beverage.
And
Yeah.
Chair, I'd like you to, when you come to the end and you want to finish, just one last question. If you can go up to the purpose of IMVAL, and I'd just like you to touch on and find out if there are any comments, agreements, or disagreements about what we say is the purpose there.
Yeah, okay. Metal prices, any comments? What's the normal way you get your metal prices? Where do you go and what do you do? And there were comments about that earlier today. Any comments about your metal prices input? Okay.
Okay. So basically, there is two things to the ways to compute to calculate to forecast the metal prices, qualitative and quantitative. The qualitative one, I think, the best way I look at this is the cash cost curve. You know, with the Q1, Q2, and Q3 cash cost curve, is really they look at the cost and based on the cost, what the price with the percentile 19 and something like that. But because I'm familiar with the quantitative, there is the sum point we have to do. There is the like test, statistical test, economical test, time series test, and so on. Based on the test, we can select best way, best method to forecast the future. Whatever technology, whatever method you will use, as long as it can be validated. Based on my experience to validate this one, I'm happy to use the artificial narrative.
So you use the cost and then you add something?
No, in the qualitative, I use the cost. But when I move to the quantitative, I do some tests for the data, statistical analysis. I look at this is normal or stationary or his heteroscedasticity. With time series, I will look at this is cycle, there is a cycle, there is seasonality. And when this point, I look at what happened. This is the basic for me to select the best method. Whatever method are using, what data I use, this is from historical data. Historical data, we have to check what effect, for example, gold, what effect the gold. Maybe GEFU, Global Economic Policy Uncertainty, maybe GPR, Gold Currency Index, whatever. We test with the correlation. If there is strong correlation, we can use this data. If not, it will affect. This is based on quantitative. Whatever method you will use, it must be validated. The closest one with the actual, this is the method that you select. The problem is, what I choose like for ARIMA, autoregressive and great moving average, or Monte Carlo, whatever, the closest to the actual is in the point is now with the heteroscedastic data, with the non-stationary, with the non-normal, is artificial neural network. But correct, I'm wrong here. I'm not to be subjective, but I'm happy to hear from you because 3 years trial average is not working anymore.
Okay, let's just take a specific example. You're doing some cash flows, future cash flows, and you want to choose a price for gold. You know, I actually, a lot of people right now are using ancient prices for gold because gold move up so quickly. What would you use?
I will use
not necessarily a number, but what's your methodology or deciding what to use?
I will use the artificial neural network methodology to do this.
Okay. Any other suggestions?
Well, if you look at IFRS 13 standard, they talk about observable inputs. So the only two metal prices that you can state with any confidence are your 3-year trailing average or whatever historical trailing average and your spot price, which are always important reference points to apply whenever you're doing a cash flow analysis. The other one, generally we use consensus prices from consensus economics or from your merchant banks to provide those. But if you're getting into specialty minerals, very often you've got to go to an industry analyst or specialist who will then provide such a forecast, but at a cost.
Yes.
I mean, if you wanted to go and get forecasts and PGM prices now, and you go to some of the guys, you're going to be paying 50, 60,000 pounds for a review.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pay that, but if the company pays for it, fine, I'll use it. Otherwise, I'll go to consensus economics and use that in the moment.
Mm. All right. I think we'll move on very quickly. Somebody asked item 6, early stage. They wanted to, it's fraught with its problems. It's probably the most difficult property to value, early stage. Any discussions on that?
The reason I put early stage in is I think it's a discussion we need to have,
Yeah.
but not now.
Okay,
But
right.
there are tools out there that we need to consider and try and tighten the way we look at that.
Okay, set. We're talking about early, fairly early stage.
Exploration, moving into scoping. Sometimes they're one and the same.
Okay, all right. Item 7, you mentioned probabilistic methods, probabilities. Any comment on that before
No,
we move on?
that came up. That was one of the tools that may be considered for early stage.
Yeah.
Together with the Veriades thinking. All I'm saying is that there's different thinking out there, and maybe we should ponder a little bit more.
Yes.
What
yes.
our current understanding of what else could be looked at.
Okay. And we covered training, and the last one is different. Somebody talked about different perceptions of different, you know, we've heard that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and you like this, I like that, the same with the projects. Yeah.
That's
value is in the eye of the beholder. I start all my quite a few writings I've done on valuation. I start value is in the eye of the beholder, like beauty. Yeah. Any comments? And I think that's going to be our last. I think we all agree value is in the eyes of the beholder. And thank you. I think we call it a wrap. Just one point Vaughan wanted to bring up. I think he's probably asking, should we consider updating the vision? This is currently what's listed as the vision and the purpose of IMVAL. Maybe we should be thinking about.
So the question here is, how would we change this if anyone had a mind to think differently?
So this is what we established at the Brisbane, post-Brisbane.
I see that there are guidelines there, but in the line of some of the guidance documents that we've created in South Africa, there may be merit in having more guidelines, or in other words, examples of how to in separate documents rather than in the template itself. It's covered there by way of guidelines.
What I would suggest, all of you look at it and chew it over, and at one of our meetings, we might want to make some suggestions if we think we want to update that vision. Because personally, I think the vision could be a little more expansive. We've already developed a common template, and I think Bill, where we are now, number 4 now. What's the update? For number 5, yeah. So
Keith, sorry, just a quick thought coming back to that presentation we had on Mongolia, where she was talking about 2 different valuation outcomes. And if you were looking at the mineral asset in terms of investment, then they would follow the IMVAL-based template. But if they were looking at transfer or of a license to a third party, there was a different approach that was going to be followed, which is some sort of government regulation. Now, we can't cater for that.
Which is, I suspect, I don't know, but I suspect it's, you know, most governments tend to look at book value, or, you know, and my suspicion is whatever was paid for the asset might be what the something around that thinking is what they are probably using. Which one of the things I do when I make presentations, I talk about all the various kinds of value. We talk about fair market value, but there's book value, there's insurance value, there's I can go through this about, I don't know, almost 10 or 12 different kinds of values. And government or regulatory type government agencies tend to go on what the cost was. They tend to go on or what the book value is. And I suspect that's what she is getting at. Maybe they call it another name, or a book value plus a premium or a discount, something like that. Anybody want to comment on that, just on that one point? Oh, okay, no.
Okay. So on that note, Keith, thank you personally from me and from everybody else for taking the time to steer this day for us. Appreciate it. And to you, Tanya, thank you very much.
Now we will have some South African drinks. Thank you.